A very warm welcome to WION Speed. I'm Akanksha Swaroop, and in the next 30 minutes I bring you the top stories from across the globe. Cricketer turned politician Imran Khan will be taking oath as Pakistan's 21st Prime Minister at the President's house in Islamabad. Senior PTI leaders met at Khan's residence in Banigala, following which the party announced the names of Asad Kaisar, Chaudhry Sarwar and Chaudhry Parvez Elahi for the positions of National Assembly Speaker, Punjab Governor and Punjab Assembly Speaker respectively. The United States has imposed sanctions on 4 Myanmar military and police commanders and 2 army units, accusing them of ethnic cleansing against Rohingya Muslims and widespread human rights abuses across the Southeast Asian nation. The sanctions by the Treasury Department mark the toughest US action so far in response to Myanmar's crackdown on the Rohingya minority. Militia violence in Democratic Republic of Congo has prevented aid workers from reaching some potential cases in an outbreak of Ebola that has so far killed 44 people. At least 1,500 people have been potentially exposed to the deadly virus in North Kivu province, but the violence means officials cannot be sure if they have identified all the chains by which it is spreading in the east of the vast country. Cars stuck in flooded underpasses was the scene in Italy's capital after torrential downpour. After only an hour, some 10 centimeters of rain had pelted down onto the roads, causing flooding and difficulties for cars moving along main roads. Luckily, most Romans are still on their holidays, but for those trying to move around in the city, you just had to get creative. Many people put on their hazard lights and started going backwards, accompanied by a fair amount of shouting. Palestinians clashed with Israeli forces during protests in the village of Kafr Qadum near the West Bank city of Nablus. Israeli security forces fired stun and smoke grenades at demonstrators who burnt tires and threw stones in return. Protesters said that the demonstration was against US President Donald Trump's deal of the century between Israel and the Palestinians, who are seeking a state in the occupied West Bank and the Gaza Strip with East Jerusalem as its capital. Afghan President Ashraf Ghani congratulated the country's armed forces in GHAZNI for their victory over Taliban insurgents in the strategically important city after clashes that killed at least 150 soldiers and 95 civilians. The 5-day Taliban siege of GHAZNI eased on Wednesday after Afghan officials declared that they had regained complete control of the city by killing hundreds of the militants. Ghani met officials in the central city of the main highway linking the capital Kabul with the south to assess security. He also met families of the victims and prayed for the dead. Israeli troops killed 2 Palestinians and wounded scores of others taking part in weekly Gaza border protests. In the meanwhile, Egyptian mediators tried to clinch a truce deal that would calm the impoverished enclave after a more than 4-month surge in confrontations. Israel this week eased its clampdown on the Gaza Strip border and fishing waters. Cairo said it was finalizing the details of a longer-term accommodation between Israel and the dominant Palestinian Islamist group Hamas. Greece officially completes its bailout program next Monday. The program will end after 8 years of cutbacks enforced in return for massive loans and following an economic collapse of the scale of the Great Depression. The crisis has proven deeply traumatic for Greeks who had enthusiastically swapped drachmas for euros in 2001. Adoption of the single currency ushered in an era of cheap credit that funded a splurge in private consumption and public spending that sent Greece's budget and current deficits ballooning. Chilean police arrested 2 men over bomb threats that grounded 9 commercial airplanes in Chile, Peru and Argentina. A specialist organized crime unit arrested a 29-year-old Chilean man in the northern city of Antofagasta overnight after using cell phone triangulation to locate him. The man was arrested at his home and his cell phone and other items were seized as evidence. A local airline that runs vintage Ju-52 planes has been given permission to resume flying following a crash on August 4th that killed all 20 people on board. The Swiss company, which runs the 1930s aircraft for scenic and charter flights, resumed flying a day after a memorial service was held for the deceased passengers and crew. 3 Austrians and 17 Swiss were on board the tri-motor Ju-52 aircraft when it crashed on the west side of the Pis-Segnas mountain in the canton of Grisons. Mexico's incoming government postponed a decision on whether to complete a new Mexico City airport. President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador said the project was tainted by corruption prior to his July 1st landslide election victory and had pressed for an existing military base north of the capital to be used instead as the new airport. However, a significant amount of work has been completed on the ambitious project, making a decision to scrap the airport potentially costly for López Obrador. 30 crew members of 2 fishing vessels were rescued from waves up to 3 meters high in the East China Sea before the Friday landing of Typhoon Rumbia. The 2 vessels were caught in strong winds and high waves brought by approaching typhoon. 4 helicopters from the Chinese Ministry of Transport rescued them from the vessels and transferred them to safe locations. German astronaut Alexander Gerst has now a new colleague who goes by the name of Roland Justin. Justin is a humanoid robot being trained to carry out tasks that could eventually assist man's efforts to set up shop on Mars. Gerst, currently serving a stint as commander on the European Space Station, is conducted a variety of tasks with Justin, directing the robot from space using a tablet. This is the 3rd experiment the German Aerospace Center has carried out to create a realistic scenario. The government of Peruvian President Martin Vizcarra is going to start barring Venezuelan migrants from entering the country unless they have passports. The measure aims to curb a surge in immigration from crisis-struck Venezuela that has driven hundreds of thousands of desperate migrants to Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, Chile and Brazil. Right now, Ecuador and Peru allow Venezuelans to enter with only their national ID cards. Tesla shares slumped as much as 9% after Chief Executive Elon Musk told the New York Times that his tweet last week about taking the company private was not reviewed by anybody. The electric car maker's stock was set for its worst day in nearly 5 months as Musk's comments come at a time when federal regulators are pressuring Tesla's directors for details on how much information he shared with them. 2 window washers were pulled to safety through a window of a United Nations high-rise after getting stuck on their scaffolding. New York firefighters cut and removed the glass in the window for the 2 to climb inside. One bottlenose whale stranded on a small island off the coast of Reykjavik was helped back into the sea as another died on shore. The two whales were found beached on the rocky Engey Island, just outside the Icelandic capital. Despite a rescue effort involving staff from whale watching companies and the Coast Guard, one of the creatures died just before 7 p.m. GMT. Both animals had sustained cuts from the rocks and lost blood. An 18-year-old student from Georgia, Vako Marchelashvili, solved 6 Rubik's Cubes underwater in one breath with the aim to set a new Guinness World Record. He was underwater for 1 minute, 44 seconds and 25 split seconds. The current record was set by Anthony Brooks at the Liberty Science Center in Jersey City in New Jersey. An anonymous artists collective unveiled a life-size nude statue of US President Donald Trump wearing clown makeup in Los Angeles. The orange-tinted likeness, featuring a massive belly, painted face and a clown hat, stood next to a billboard painted with the words, quote-unquote, "A clown can get away with murder." The statue is from the same mold as a series that appeared unannounced in public spaces in New York and 4 other US cities in August 2016, when Trump was running for president. A Sao Paulo zoo reported recently that it has registered the first fully natural hatching and care process of the endangered Brazilian merganser duck. It was the first 100% natural reproduction. Authorities at the zoo said they had not been sure if the process would work since the parents had been raised by humans. There are fewer than 250 Brazilian mergansers in the wild. The Atiba Zoo is the only one in the world that runs a conservation program for the species. New York's pop-up Candytopia delighted candy fans with colorful and dreamy displays of all things sweet. Candytopia has more than a dozen Instagram-mable rooms filled with kids diving into a pool filled with fake marshmallows, artwork made entirely out of candy, rainbow-colored confetti and candy for the taking. The exhibit, which started in Los Angeles last year, is open through November 15th. The worst floods in a century in Kerala have killed 167 people and forced more than 200,000 into relief camps. The southwestern coastal state's chief minister has now sought military reinforcements to boost rescue efforts. As the water have risen, many people have found it increasingly hard to access food and other basic amenities to reach safety. The rescue forces of India further stepped up their relief and rescue operations in southern India's state of Kerala, which has been facing the wrath of floods for the last couple of days. The incessant rains are not bringing any respite to the people, with streets inundated with flood waters. The Indian Army and the Indian Navy has been pressed in to carry out rescue and relief operations in vulnerable areas on full throttle. Helicopters airlifted stranded families from rooftops and dam gates were thrown open. A herbal food exhibition was held in India's Srinagar city to revive traditional Kashmiri food and culture in the strife-torn province. Visitors in large numbers thronged the exhibition to learn about herbal food and vegetables grown in forests that were used in the earlier times. Traditional dishes were also prepared during the exhibition to give a taste of the past to the visitors and make them adopt healthy eating habits. The 4-day 550 Youth Forum organized by the Department of the Information and International Relations of Central Tibetan Administration in Exile kicked off in Dharamshala. Presided by Dr. Lobsang Sangye, the Youth Forum will deliberate on CTA's 55 vision in shaping Tibet's political future and strengthening the Tibetan freedom movement. The forum comes as a succession of 550 forum that took place in October 2017. Let's turn our attention to the major stories from the world of sports. The 2018 Asian Games, co-hosted by the Indonesian cities of Jakarta and Palembang, officially kicks off with the opening ceremony later today. India, among the 45 participating nations, have sent a contingent of 572 athletes featuring in 36 different sporting disciplines. Javelin throw star Neeraj Chopra is India's flag bearer in the 18th edition of the quadrennial Continental Games.